I started comparing myself with others that I knew were not even as good as I was, but had their own tailoring shops and everything. It was really frustrating, and a few times I felt like giving up, but hi everyone, welcome back to Lifestyle with Eddie. If you're new here, welcome to the family. Today I'll be sharing my story of how I left home for Lagos. So 8 years ago, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Glory, glory, pack up your bags and go to a land where I will show you." And like Abraham, I obeyed the voice of the Lord and left. I was just joking. That was not how it happened. That was on a lighter note, just to crack you all up a bit. Okay, let's get right into the story. But before we get right into it, while this video is going on, you will just see my cat running around or making noise. Please ignore him. Don't let him distract you. He wants to create his own content. Just leave him. I'll soon give him camera and a chair and ring lights, so that he will start his own content. Now let's get right into the story. 8 years ago, on the 17th of April 2017, I left Warri, Delta State for Lagos. I was 23 at the time, and what makes the story interesting is that I had no plan whatsoever to relocate. Everyone I knew, my family, my friends, they were all in Delta. I had lived there all my life. So the way everything happened was God's plan, right? God had planned it all along, but I had no idea. Like, God led me through it all. He led me every step of the way. I believe that God led me every step of the way. He placed me at where I was supposed to be at every point in time. I don't know if I missed any step at any point, but the way everything went, I know that God actually led me and He put me where I was supposed to be at every point in time. So let me say this for context before I get right into the story, just to make everything clear. At the time, I didn't have a personal relationship with God. I was a Christian. I was going to church, paying my offering, tithe, and just the regular things, but I didn't know God for myself personally. I had no personal relationship with God. I had no idea that God could, directly talk to a person. I had no idea that I could sit with God and hear from Him for myself. I didn't know all of that. But I knew like God could speak to pastors. I was at a point where I needed directions. I needed to know what way to follow for my life. During that time, I started seeking God, trying to understand Him better. And I was just at like the beginning level, like at the beginning phase. So during the period before the move, I was living with my mom and my siblings in Warri. And I was working at a fashion house at the time, which was where everything started from. The whole relocating plan, the idea, it came from the fashion house I was working at that time. So for context, let me also tell you how I started working at that fashion house so that you will know that God led me. So see, when I say God led me every step of the way, I know what I'm saying. As the story is going, you see it. When I finished learning how to sew, I didn't have the funds to start up my own tailoring business, so I was just at home, thinking of what next to do. Then one day I made an outfit for my brother, and a neighbor who was also a tailor saw the outfit and was impressed. He asked to see me and introduced me to the fashion house where he was working at that time. So that was how I got the job. Even before I met the man, it was like a long back and forth. Like, I was always missing him for some reasons, but when we finally met, he introduced me to the fashion house where he was working, and I was given a job there just like that. Working at that fashion house was really humbling for me because I had to learn, relearn, and unlearn at that place, because their level of sewing there was higher than what I had learned. So even though I was really good, I wasn't at their level. So I had to like learn their own way of sewing again, which was really frustrating. That kind of a thing where you feel like you've already like trained yourself, you're good enough, and then you go somewhere and all your knowledge feels like nothing. I started comparing myself with others that I knew were not even as good as I was, but had their own tailoring shops and everything. It was really frustrating, and a few times I felt like giving up, but thank God I didn't give up, because all of that led to me being here today. So I kept on learning, improving myself, and eventually caught up to a good level before I left. Even though I was working, the money I was earning was not enough to meet up my needs and also support my family, because I was living with my mom at the time. My mom was taking care of my siblings and I alone, and the small business she was doing was not enough to take care of everyone's needs, pay for the necessary things, so I had to also support, right? And the money I was earning also was still not enough to support, take care of my own financial needs. So I was still struggling financially. So during that period, generally my family was struggling financially. And tailoring is physically demanding. Not having to eat will affect your productivity. So sometimes I'll go to work without breakfast, but I'll put in my best effort to make sure I am productive and achieve something. So somehow the secretary at this fashion house found out that I wasn't eating sometimes, so she offered to be giving me breakfast sometimes, like not every time, was just like, let's say once a week or sometimes twice a week. I was sharing a breakfast with her. So one day while we were eating together, she brought up this topic of relocating to Lagos. So before the day that we were eating together, she brought up the topic. We had a small quarrel earlier, and we didn't talk for a few days. So I didn't go to meet her for food at all. But on this particular day, I was so hungry. I needed to eat. So I had to swallow my pride, and I went to her to ask for food. I just told her that, I know we're quarreling, but please let me eat first. After eating, we can continue from there. She laughed and gave me food. So while we were eating, she just randomly brought up the topic of relocating to Lagos, asked me if I had ever thought of relocating, and I told her no, that I had no plans whatsoever of leaving my state, relocating or going anywhere, that my family, they're here and I want to be with my family. The conversation ended there. I didn't think about it, nothing. The next day she brought up the topic again, trying to convince me to think about relocating. Then I asked her a lot of questions like, where will I live? How will I survive? And how am I going to manage everyone I know? They are in Delta State. Not like I was financially stable back in Delta State, that, okay, I had a good job that was holding me back. I'm not saying my job was bad, but I mean, it wasn't like catering for my needs. It wasn't fully meeting my financial needs. I was worried about how I was going to survive. How will I eat? Everybody I knew, they were back in Delta State, and then you're asking me to relocate to somewhere where I don't even have anybody, right? I just told her, no, it's not possible. I'm not going anywhere. But she told me to think about it and not just brush it off. Then she also said we could start up a tailoring business where she would be managing and I will be sewing. When I got home, I found myself thinking about it. Then I discussed it with my younger sister, who was a teenager at the time. She also asked the same questions I asked, like, how will you survive? Where will you stay? How will you manage? But surprisingly, she encouraged me to also think about it and not brush it off. And that really surprised me. Like, why is she encouraging me to think about it after asking those questions? Right? So God was using these people to just put this thing in my heart, because I could not hear from him directly, right? So it was using these people to put this thought in my heart, because he needed me to move. Days went by, and this secretary at work kept on, talking to me about it, kept on trying to convince me to relocate. I didn't even know why. I asked her at some point, like, why are you trying to convince me to relocate? She said she didn't know. She just wanted me to. She just thought about it and felt like talking to me about it as well, because we didn't even have a personal relationship. That I know I was eating with her, I was sharing her food, but it's not like we had a personal relationship that she would come and tell me things about herself or I would tell her things about myself. No, we didn't have that kind of a relationship. So I was so surprised when she brought up the topic of relocating. When she saw that my major problem was where to stay, she told me I could stay with her and a friend and sister. So she was going to relocate and stay with a friend of ours. Her sister was going with her. So she said we could all stay together at a friend's place. It was just a one room, not even a big house. And when she told me that, I was like, okay, I think I would consider it. Why not? Why not do it? Why not take that bold step? Even though it was really scary, I didn't just embrace the idea of leaving. I was scared, but I was also considering it. So I found myself thinking of relocating to Lagos to seek for greener pastures, like people would popularly say. I think a few days after she told me I could stay with her and her friend, she came back to tell me that I couldn't stay with them anymore, that her friend said she was having another friend over, so I could not come, it would be overcrowded. As she said that, I was like, okay, this is it. This is my cue to not travel, to not relocate. So as at the time she mentioned it, from like the second time when my sister encouraged me to think about it, I prayed to God to, help me, to show me if this was his plan for me, if he wanted me to go ahead. As I said earlier, during this period, I was learning to live according to God's will for my life. I was learning to know God's will for my life, to live the God's way. So I prayed to God about this whole relocating thing and told him to guide me, to direct me on what to do. That if this was his plan for me, he should let me know somehow, give me a sign. So when this girl said that they didn't have a place for me anymore, I took that as a sign to not go ahead. So I took it as a sign that, okay, God is saying no. So I decided to just drop the matter until I went to church that Sunday. So this happened during the week. I had the conversation during the week. And on Sunday, I went to church, and the topic the pastor preached on that day was, move. You have dwelt too long on this mountain. It is time to move. Oh my God. As the preaching was going on, it just felt like God was using that pastor to answer all the questions I had asked. This pastor was answering all the questions, everything. That kind of preaching that as the person is preaching, it's just hitting you. It feels like it's hitting you. It's for you. That preaching that day is for you. That was what happened to me. As the preaching was going on, my sister gave me this look at some point that says, that's for you, right? You are the one he's talking about, right? And I laughed. By the end of that service, I was so hyped and convinced that God wanted me to move. I was really hyped, and on the way back home, my sister and I talked about it, and she said she felt it, that was God giving me direction. That was God answering me and telling me to go ahead. So I said the same, that okay, I felt so too, but at this point, we're both learners, learning to understand God, to know God better. So I was hyped and started planning to go again and started thinking of how to get a place to stay. So I called up my cousin, who at the time had just started living in Lagos, and this cousin is just a year older than me, and this person had just started living in Lagos. So the person was not fully set up or anything. They didn't have a place of their own. So this person told me I could come and stay where they were staying, which was also someone else's house, as long as I was willing to manage, because the place was in a very good area, and they didn't have like a proper bathroom or toilet. So the person said if I could manage, then I could come. And that was it, another sign, because I had said if I find a place to stay, then I will go. So when this person agreed that I could stay, I was happy and hyped again to travel. But then I would go to work, reality would hit me and I'll change my mind. It was like every single day I was having this every single day at this time I was having this conversation with my sister. Like every day I get back from work, we would have the conversation, and this is how the conversation would go. It would be me like telling her about all my doubts, why I shouldn't go, and she convincing me why I should go, right? So it was always like this back and forth. So when I called up this cousin and the person said I could come, my sister thought, okay, that was it. Like, I've decided I would go, right? Even me, I thought that was all I needed. But like we all know, relocating to a new place is not something easy that you can just decide, especially when you've stayed in a particular place all your life. Everyone family, friends, everyone, like they're back there, and I just want to up and move. Also, when all of this was going on, I never discussed it with my mom. I did not tell my mom. To start with, my mom was, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, my mom was dealing with a lot during this period. She was struggling, financially, emotionally. My mom is a strong woman. Like, a lot happened. So I didn't even discuss it with her. And we didn't have a good relationship at the time. But right now, we are besties. I didn't tell my mom anything. She had no idea I was thinking of relocating. But I was always discussing it with my sister. I couldn't tell my mom. I could not get I didn't have anyone older than me that I could go to for advice. I lived a large portion of my life, just doing things, figuring things out for myself. If I had decisions to make, I was making them mostly by myself, especially because that time I didn't want to burden my mom. She was already going through a lot, so I wasn't going to her with my problems. I learned how to deal with things myself, take decisions by myself, take steps by myself. I had no one to really talk to talk sense into me or anything, which somehow I feel like was a good thing. I'm not saying it was generally good, because there were some mistakes I made that I wouldn't have made if I had some people that I could have discussed with, that would have spoken sense into me. But at some point it was good, because it made me take some radical decisions that actually changed my life. Like this step to Lagos. Because maybe if I had discussed with an older person, they would make me see reasons why I shouldn't go. So again, like when I would see how like I'm struggling to eat right here in Delta State where I'm working, I have a job I'm doing, I have my mom here, I have my family and friends, I'm still struggling, I'm still, struggling financially. My mom would cook and I'll eat at home, but I was still struggling. So imagine when I now go to live on my own where I'll be taking care of everything. I was really so worried, and that thing of not having a roof over my head was scary for me, because I had stayed a few years not having anywhere to stay, and I knew, like, not having a proper place to stay, and I knew how it affected me, going from place to place, people telling you leave my house and all of that. So I was really so scared. I was so afraid that I changed my mind again. Even after that preaching that I thought was the sign I needed, I changed my mind, and this time I told God that if this is really you, if it's you and you want me to go, give me a clear sign, something so visible that when I see it, I will know that this is you. Like, I won't even have any questions. I won't have doubts. So that was it. After changing my mind, I just said, I won't go anymore. My stand is that I am not relocating anymore until I see a very clear sign, something so clear. And God gave me the sign I wanted. So as usual, I went to work on this day and got back. I saw that my mom and sister had a small argument. I thought it was just something we would just, talk about and forget about it. And while I was trying to plead with my mom to ignore what she did, my mom got angry and just told every one of us to leave our house. So at this time, my older brother was living on his own, but with friends. He was living with friends, but he was always coming home. So he too was there that day. My mom just told every one of us, leave my house. Like, she was fed up, she was tired. I said it earlier that she was going through a lot. My mom was going through a difficult time during that period, which was understandable considering everything that she had gone through. I don't even know what I would have done if I were in her shoes. So my mom was fed up, she was exhausted, and she just told every one of us to leave. And we thought she was joking. She told us to go to our father's house, that she was tired. And we thought my mom was joking until she drove us out, locked our door, and left and disappeared and left. So now I can talk about this, like that event, and laugh. But when it happened, it wasn't something funny. It was very emotional for my siblings and I, including my mom. It was a tough time for every one of us. Now we can laugh about it. Even my mom, my siblings, we can all laugh about it. But during that period when it happened, it wasn't something that we could laugh about or smile. It was really tough. So while I was just thinking about what to do next, I just kind of heard clearly that this is the sign you asked for. I have given you the sign you asked for. And it hits me that, oh, okay, because now I have nowhere else to stay. This is the sign. This is the sign. Because immediately I left, everything settled. I mean, the day I landed in Lagos like this, when I say landed, I did not fly, yo. I did not fly, yo. I will let you the money to fly. No. So immediately I got to Lagos, right? During the course of the story, I will share that part, you will know. Everything went back to normal. My mom took back our children and everything was fine. So that was the sign I needed. God knew that if he did not give me a big push, I wouldn't leave. The story is already getting too long. Maybe I'll just, end it here for now. But before I end the story, I just want you to know that when you seek God, he would answer you. God is not a wicked father. God is not wicked. When you seek him, when you seek to know him, you will see him. God will show you himself. Also, I would also like to say that, sometimes when you'll be going through some tough times, you'll be experiencing some things like when I started working at that fashion house, I saw me working there as a setback. Like, it felt like I was learning afresh. Like, why am I learning afresh instead of me to go and set up my business with the knowledge I had? But that was God setting me up for what he wanted. That was God arranging everything. That was him training me for where he was taking me to. It's God training you for where he's taking you to. Sometimes you feel like you have better knowledge, better experiences, but you're still at a particular place and you feel stuck. Sometimes, I'm not saying all the times, like in my case, it was God training me. It was God placing me where I needed to be, right? For him to do what he needed to do in my life. And when you start to seek God, be ready for a change. Because you can't be seeking to follow God's purpose for your life and not expect a huge turnaround or a huge change. Sometimes Your case might not be my own. God might not ask you to relocate. He might ask you to leave a job. Your own might be to leave a job. Your own might be to, leave someone that you are dating. It might be it might even be to leave the country for some people. While for some, it might just be another form of change. But know this, when you seek to know God's will for your life, when you decide to start following God's plan for your life, things will change. Know that and know peace. So I'm going to end this video here, and I'll do the part 2 because I don't want it to be very long and boring.